Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video, and this time I'm going to talk about the Zoomancer build guide for the 3.21 Crucible League coming up on Friday. This build is a stupidly tanky build that basically shoves every single minion that you can think of onto the field, and that's basically how it's played. It's incredibly good for league starting, and it's a bit slow on in terms of clearing. And the boss DPS is alrightish on the low budget version, and it gets you through league starting with barely any gear, and it's just really comfortable to play. The higher budget version kicks up over 500,000 effective HP, which just makes it absurdly tanky. Now keep in mind, this is not a poison build, it's not a super giga bossing build, it's not a super giga clearing build. This is just an overall, all-round, well-rounded beast, if you will. And it's just absolutely crazy how well it performs. And the best part about it, it's super lazy, and it brings in the most nostalgic approach to the Diablo 2 Necromancer playstyle. Now I'm going to show you the low budget version of the PoB and some gameplay footage of a medium budget version of the build in this video. With 3.21 patch notes, however, we are seeing some slight nerfs to this build in terms of Molten Shell. It still provides a ton of defensive layers through Bone Barrier and other means as well. We're going to be utilizing the Frontline Jewel for the higher budget versions as well. Well, let's just dive into it, shall we? So this is the low budget version of the PoB, and I want to show you the gear before talking about the tree and the efficiency that this build brings to the table. The tree essentially, the gear essentially is using Bitter Dream, and this is something you can use already from level 32, allowing you to utilize both zombies, golems, and later spectres to level with. This weapon can carry you up to red tier maps without any sort of issues whatsoever. I actually went ahead and picked up a very cheap unique called the Restless Courage for some very cheesy, easy access to block capping yourself as you're playing for the defensive layers, as the purpose of this build is to be a ridiculously tanky and solid, lazy build to play. And it works perfect for people who have wrist issues and still want to play that Diablo 2 Necromancer playstyle in the old classic way of playing ARPGs in general. When leveling, I would recommend trying to pick up 2 of these because they're just absolutely insane with how effective they are for your minions, creating insane amount of links supports for your minion play. Other than that, the low budget version is using a +1 level of minion skills helmet with the benchcraft with a number of extra skeletons and zombies. The way this build is played is actually using both zombies, skeletons, spectres, and golems, and obviously the evolved version of summon skeletons as well. This is absolutely crazy, and it is very important to point out the visual clarity is not something you're going to have when you're playing this build. I'm going to show you that in the gameplay footage here in a minute. The low budget version of the chest piece would be a Tabula Rasa. If you can get yourself a Skin of the Loyal, that would be a good addition as well. Skin of the Lords would obviously be better. Keep in mind that you might make sure that you get the correct colors of that. That chest piece will allow you to pick up the new Mastery, 15% increased life if there are no life modifiers on the equipped body armor. This is currently not available in PoB. As you can see, the life is a little low, but it will be a 15% increase through this mastery. Other than that, the items that we're using is a 4 green triad grip. This is a very common unique, and getting 4 green sockets is very simple with the socket color trick, which I'm going to show you right now. Basically, the socket color trick is used when it comes to items that have a main priority of a certain stat. For example, Triad Grip has armor and energy shield, which means it's more likely to roll red and blue sockets rather than green, which is what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and pick out an item, and let's just take a pair of intelligence boots. And we want to have a save for red on this. The best way to check this is to utilize the Verici calculator, which you can access by Googling Verici Calc. I'll leave a link in the descriptions below to this website. You'll set in the amount of sockets you have in the item, which will be 4 when we put some jewelers onto this bad boy. And then, as you can see, it says requires level 67 with 123 intelligence without sockets included. Putting 123 in the intelligence means it will be more likely to roll blue sockets over anything else. However, if we're looking for 4 red, as in this example, we can calculate and it will tell me that I have to spend 1,500 average chromatics. This is obviously not very effective. So the trick that you can utilize for this is to go to the benchcraft. And on the benchcraft, you can then say, hey, I'm going to put in 2 red sockets, which will color socket number 1 and 2. That will be this socket and this socket to become red. What you can do then is actually just straight up change the benchcraft to put in amount of sockets instead, making the item 2 sockets. This will keep the socket number 1 and 2 that we've just colored red, and then we can make it 3 sockets through the jeweler trick. This will then have a similar chance of hitting that off color as if you were to put a chromatic or dropping it. You can verify this by saying, hey, I want to see 1 red out of this, which is an average of 2.6 chromes. So 2.6 times is the average of doing this trick to get that to become red. So I'll make it back to 2 sockets and back to 3 sockets and 2 sockets and 3 sockets. Rinse, repeat till you hit that red socket that you want. Obviously, it's an equal chance in this case to get a green one. And this is how we color the triad grip as well for an easy access to 4 green sockets. Once you hit the 3 sockets, obviously the same process would be here to make it into 4 sockets to get that last colored red. Obviously, you can do this with chromatics, but it should cost you more currency doing this. As you can see here, we're being incredibly unlucky. But this is basically how you do it, and this is the trick to get 4 off colors on items and that have a harder probability of rolling the colors that you're looking for. That's what we're going to utilize for the tri-grip. And when it comes to the PoB, to go back to it, the other unique we're going to use on a low budget is actually permanent skeletons, which means that you're going to be using Alberon's Warpath. This allows you to use Convocation, which will teleport your skeletons to you as well, making this build very comfortable and even a bigger army of minions running around as you're playing. This is something we're going to step away from in the higher budget, which I'll show you in a bit as well. The amulet, we're going to be oiling Testudo, and the amulet is supposed to be benchcraft with endurance charge and just having any sort of life, of course, but any attributes or resistances that you might need should be shoved in here. Hunger Loop is utilized for the Animate Guardian, and this is something that low-budget builds I tend to avoid using in low-budget builds. But in this case, because of the way the build's designed is heavily focused on keeping your minions alive, it would be very preferable to use this. And the way Hunger Loop works is that it has a colored socket in the Hunger Loop, and what you want to do is level up a gem to level 19, and then when it is ready to level to 20, it will pop up here on the right hand side and over here. And what you can do is, instead of leveling it to 20, you'll socket it inside the Hunger Loop and then level it to 20. This will make the Hunger Loop consume the gem and become a support gem in there. You can do this up to 4 times, and I would strongly recommend, as the guide shows in here, there will be a written guide in the link to the descriptions below as well. I would recommend going for Minion Life, Feeding Frenzy, and then Meat Shield, and then you can skip Elemental Army and go for something like Increased Area of Effect if you would like that approach to it, because that is one of the ways for us to increase clear speed if you so will. So one of these two would be preferable to run, and I'll explain that in a bit as well. So that's how the Hunger Loop system works. The other ring should be a bone ring to help minion resistances and also give you life and minion stats. The Darkness and Throne is a given, especially with the buffs in 3.21 Crucible. Jewels should be life-based, obviously, and if you need any assistance with resistances, you're gonna put those on the jewels, especially the ones inside the Darkness and Throne, because this build uses a lot of uniques. So make sure you pick up resistances if you can. Physical damage or cold damage is the 2 flat damage modifiers you'd like for your minions. Flask-wise, it's mainly a matter of personal preference. However, getting a flagellant prefix roll means that you're going to get charges back when enemies hit you or if you block, which is how we're going to keep staying alive. So using a basalt granite flask is for defenses. An instant life flask and a quicksilver is the mandatory or rather preferable setup. And the last flask you can do whatever you want with. Rumi's Concoction, Quartz Flask, whatever you feel like. And then the jewel we're going to use that is unique is the Unending Hunger Jewel, which makes your minions have a 50% chance on Killing Blow to gain on the Soul Eater buff. The reason we're not using 2 is because it's enough with 1 of these, because once they have done a Killing Blow that triggered the Soul Eater, they are in fact always going to have that Soul Eater up for the entirety of that 20-second window. So they only need to trigger it, which will be every second Killing Blow when it's available. This will make our Primal Crush Claw Spectres big and juicy. Now, when it comes to the skill tree, I'm going to talk about the ascendancies first. We're going to be rushing into Commander Darkness with this, especially if you're running with Bitter Dream. This helps your minions stay alive through capping their resistances effectively. But it also helps yourself alleviate a lot of gear pressure on a league start scenario, which is where this build is really excelling or being very good for. And that is to alleviate a lot of pressure when it comes to your survivability as you're playing, and your minions will be covered at the same time. Secondly, I would pick up minus aggression since we're going to use a lot of minions. We want them to be effective and moving fast towards your enemies. And then we're going Mystical Sacrifice, which will be utilizing Bone Offering to further scale our defensive layers. And then Plaguebringer is just extra damage as we're generating corpses, getting that increased area effect that will reduce damage done by the enemies and more damage dealt to them. Tree-wise, in the skill tree, when this is posted, we will have in the build guide as well as in the PoB some leveling trees. This is showing you how to rush up over to Enduring Bond, getting the sacrifice so you can use zombies to stay alive, and utilizing either SRS or Absolution to level with. I would recommend Absolution. And then in the higher levels, we're basically picking up the minion nodes on the left-hand side tree, Devotion for HP, more HP here, and then going up here for the Mana Reservation Mastery, through the Mana Mastery node, as well as extra spectres, the Death Attunement. And this is where we're picking up Indomitable Army, giving us further defenses for our minions to keep them alive. This should have no problems keeping the Enemy Guardian alive, even on super low budget, which is actually what I'll be showcasing in the gameplay footage, is actually a low-budget Enemy Guardian. In the higher levels, low-budget endgame, we are not using any clusters. It's just more life, getting some accuracy through Grave Pact and block through Sanctuary, and that's basically it. It's very, very, very generic. Do keep in mind that you're gonna want to run the Golem Commander to get that extra Golem out for more damage output. The higher budget version we'll talk about after the gameplay footage. So we're going to use this map up with Fortune Favors the Brave, some Scarabs, and we're just going to go ham and show you the sustainability of this build. Despite having a very low actual life count, this build is rather tanky. And obviously you'll have to be careful when picking up the ritual, the altars from the Eater World or Searing Exarch, because they can definitely hamper the defensive layers of this build. Essentially what you want to do is, when you run into the enemies, is cast out your Summon Skeletons. And as you can see, we have a lot of minions on the field. Convocate, cast out some more skeletons. And anytime you decide to use something like Ball Summon Skeletons, the build will pack up over 70 minions, which is absolutely crazy. I'm going to go to the boss and show you the efficiency there and how comfortable it is to play. So as you can see, the build is very comfortable. You just basically run, you convocate, you throw out some new Summon Skeletons, and they'll just demolish everything. As you can see, the Primal Crush Claw here is mega big. This guy is actually named Bob the Second, because Bob the First is my Enemy Guardian. Bob the Second is now super big, and this is because he's on steroids. And that happens every now and then through Unending Hunger Jewel through the Soul Eater buff. This will obviously make him collect a bunch of souls, and he'll just go absolutely bananas on enemies and have insane cast speed, insane attack speed, insane movement speed. It's just crazy to see how fast he'll actually be attacking. That's one of the increased damage sources we have for increased clearing efficiency. As you might have noticed already, the visual clarity in a build like this is pretty much non-existent. You can't see anything, and that's why it's important that we have so many defenses on the build as we're playing it. So on the boss, I'll show you the Vault Summon Skeletons to show you how insane this build can be when it comes to bossing. If you look on the top left corner, you'll see 1 AG, 4 Spectres, 3 Golems, 10 Zombies, 2 Skitter Bots, and we'll have 11 Skeletons. And then we pop out another bunch of Vault Summon Skeletons. And all you need to do is just keep your Molten Shell running and click your flasks and just watch things die, basically. Curse the boss when it's attackable. Obviously, you don't want to sit and face tank anything if you can avoid it, even though the build can do it. But this is essentially the build, and it's just absolutely beautiful to see this in action. I absolutely love playing this. It's very similar to the Arakaali's Fang in terms of playstyle-ish, if you will, or what it brings. Oh, Jesus Christ. Cut that out. So what makes this build really stand out is the amount of defenses this build brings to the table and how effective and fun it is to play. But most importantly, it really gives me this nostalgic Diablo 2 Necromancer feeling, which is something I've been missing from a lot of builds in the in Path of Exile lately. This build really shines when it comes to that part of it. When it comes to the skill section for the PoB, I want to tackle that real quick, and that is the fact that our golems and zombies will be linked together in our body armor, making it a 2-5 link setup with multi-strike, mini damage, elemental damage attacks, ruthless. You can switch in melee splash. I never felt the need for it, but you can. It will increase your clear speed a little bit. I'm just too lazy to bother switching the skills myself. The Bitter Dream Spectres for the low buddy will be using Raise Spectre with mini damage and multi-strike for the Primal Crush Claws. Those are harvest-related minions. You can come to my global channel 6666 in-game and ask for them there, unless you want to find them yourself. Aura-wise, we're going to be using Generosity Hatred and then having a Convocation. Skeletons will be Vault Summon Skeletons with multi-strike, mini damage, and Ruthless. Tri grip, it needs 4 greens. So we're gonna have face run, dash, second wind, desecrate. Now desecrate is a must, obviously, but second wind, dash, and face run are just the mandatory necessities that we're forced into because of the 4 green sockets on our gloves. Obviously there are better options, but for this build we're gated because of the glove choice. The other auras will be Determination, and then we're going to run Skitterbots as well as Frostbite Curse with Bone Offering to cast this ourselves manually. And then obviously the Hungry Loop. The medium budget version for this build, I do want to tackle that real quick, is very affordable because we're going to use things like the Brass Dome, which only needs 3 off colors because of the fact that we're going to run 3 blue and 3 red, so it's not too hard to color, which is a common problem with the Brass Dome. It doesn't have any HP, so in this case we can utilize the Mastery again to pick up some extra life. Medium budget will be using a larger passive, 8th passive large cluster jewel for Feasting Fiend's Renewal and Vicious Bite. We're also using a Blessed Rebirth Renewal. This is because we're no longer using permanent skeletons, and we're going to have to resummon our skeletons quite often if we didn't use one of these. And here's the big juicy part. A medium budget build with 250,000 EHP thanks to the Frontline Jewel. This gives us Veterans Awareness. So in-game you can see my defensive layers being 90% all resistance. Now obviously I don't have the fast setup for my armor with this budget version right now. However, the resistance goes down to 80% when you don't have either Molten Shell or Bone Armor active. So in this case, when we pop it, we are going to get 10% extra all resistances. This is coming exclusively from Veterans Awareness. If you look at the EHP, this is why you don't want to face tank things. When you take that away, the EHP goes down quite drastically. And this is happening through a very small window. And anytime you pop your guard skill, you're going to have tons of extra defensive layers from that. It's just crazy to see. And this is the medium budget version of this. The higher budget version is more reliable in terms of keeping the defensive numerical value higher. Other than that, we are going to be using some pretty crazy things in the medium budget version. Obviously, in this case, I have not included any woke gems, I believe. We're using the same approach with the Skater Boss. We have Molten Shell with increased duration. We have the Veterans Jewel, so therefore we need to use the Molten Shell or Bone Barrier. We're still forced into the 4 green socket tri-grip. We're still sitting on the Convocation. We're running Determination. Keep in mind that you don't want to link Determination with Generosity. Tempest Shield will go into an Unset Ring in this version. And that's basically it. But gear-wise, we can now smack in things like Anima Stone for more golems. We can run a Thread of Hope in the top left corner, or the top corner of the Witch area to get Golem Commander, as well as extra HP. So there's a few things you can do, as well as a mana from Arcane Will. There's a lot of cool things you can do with this build that's really fun to see, but what really makes this build stand out is the efficiency on a League Start scenario with the use of a simple Bitter Dream, and it just goes through everything, and enemies will be hitting your minions who will not be dying. It's very safe and comfortable to play. Outside of that, this build is using an all-star pricing in the higher budget version, but it's the Hatred version, which is very, very cheap in the current state of the meta, in the current state of the game. Other than that, generic Darkness and Throne, Hungry Loop, Tri-Grip, Brass Dome. We have Frontline, like I mentioned, and then Unending Hunger. Other than that, it's just rare gear. We have some implicits from the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds for Brittle and extra life regen. We have an Unset Ring, like I mentioned. We have a Bone Helmet in this case. The way you craft this helmet is very simple. You'll spam Bound Fossils till you hit +1 level of minion skills with either minion damage, hypothermia, conk effect, or socket of spells have increased crit. And if you hit any 2 of those modifiers together with +1 level of minion skills, you can then corrupt the helmet through the use of the Bestiary craft with a Krashik Vassal, which makes the item corrupted without risking to brick it, but it gives it 30% quality. And at this point, we can use the Tainted Teardrop craft. It is a pretty expensive helmet. I'd expect it to cost about 10 to 15 divines to craft, which is why this is the medium budget version. And in here, we'll be shoving in our skeletons and our golems in this budget version, or this medium budget version. Shield, just a generic minion shield, not a life recovery unlock, but rather plus level of minion skills with life. Any other minion stats would be preferable in this case to crit as well as damage. The one is a generic minion one with +2 minion damage and minion attack and cast speed and a trigger craft. So this is the medium budget version of this. And it's just beautiful to see. I do want to talk a little bit about the high budget version, because again, I do want to stress the fact that this build really stands out as an excellent League starter character. However, as an excellent League starter character, it might fall flat when it comes to the segment between the higher budget and the low budget version if you're looking to do endgame bosses. This is not something I would recommend bringing into Uber bosses unless you shove in super high budget currency into it, as then it will just absolutely demolish that level of content. It's beautiful to play, it's really enjoyable, and most importantly, it's comfortable as hell to do. The gameplay footage you're watching right now is from our Twitch subscriber Helmbreaker, who's been playing this build and showcased this for me, and I'm making an everything guide for it now. The link to the guide will be in the descriptions below, and this high budget version is just absolutely demolishing everything. There will be POBs for this in the written guide as well, of course, and I just don't have any other words to say that the TLDR of the build is extremely comfortable to level up as a League starter build. Super effective on the low budget to get through the entire campaign, all the way up to red tier maps, do the generic initial endgame pinnacle bosses without having any big issues with them whatsoever. And then medium budget just makes the build more fun to play, and then you can just go crazy with the high budget and become this master of minions that just summons an entire army of your slaves to do your bidding. Absolutely love this build. It's a rather niche one, definitely not a meta build, but definitely worth giving it a look if this is something you'd like to try out. If I were to compare this to the current meta builds, I would say that on a low budget version, this is one of the best League starter minion builds for new and newer players and casual players alike. On the medium budget front, I would say that the closest comparison would be something like an Arakalis Fang build. However, the Arakalis should be outperforming this build in terms of clear speed and to some degree boss damage, but I think they're pretty equal in single target boss fights. But for clearing, Arakalis just skyrockets because of Profane Bloom explosions. However, speaking of explosions, this build, the way you solve clear speed is to utilize the Impulsa chest piece together with Gravebind gloves on the enemy guardian. This is why we want to use increased area of effect to the enemy guardian in the Hungry Loop, because this will scale the area of which the enemy guardian will consume or collect the killing blows from the kills that is happening around it, as well as Impulsa, making sure that if enemies are shocked through your skitterbots will then explode, and it's just absolutely beautiful, and that increases the clear speed significantly. So that is something I definitely would recommend to bring it more in line with the Arakalis version. But as you might have noticed already, that is for the higher budget versions of the build. I don't want to prolong this video too much. I hope you guys enjoy this type of playstyle. I've had a lot of fun playing this. I'm really looking forward to trying this out in a higher budget version at some point during 3.21. And I might actually League start with this because of how effective it is with the leveling approach, at least. So I haven't really decided what my League starter is. I hope you guys will have fun in 3.21 Crucible. If you like this video and like the build, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and leave a comment down below what you think of the build. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe and keep rocking.